Now, one of the reasons for this is because the military industrial complex largely is able to, have a lot of say of what goes on in America media, and they do this by sponsoring content. Ben Armbruster and the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft has done a fantastic job of highlighting this particular newsletter that's put out by Politico over the past couple of years, really, I guess, that always is sponsored by the military industrial complex companies like Lockheed Martin, and always hypes the international threat from China and other countries. This particular time, they have a headline that says, "Suspected new Chinese missile garrison found by commercial satellite." And they're talking about, oh my God, China built a new base, missile base for its nuclear weapons. Well, actually, it wasn't that big of a deal because the US knew China was going to build a base there. And so they just got a picture of it. And yet they're making it out to be like this is some huge new threat from China. And this is also a newsletter that's sponsored by Lockheed Martin, a clear conflict of interest. By the way, Lockheed Martin is a company that has regularly failed in all of its promises and yet continues to get major contracts. It's going to get a $10.9 billion deal to update the F-22 program, which is absolutely insane when you consider that the U.S. will, I guess, give Lockheed Martin well over $1 trillion, maybe going on $2 trillion now, over the life of the F-35 program for all the planes that's flying there, even though the plane still barely works. And yet now we're going to give that company another $11 billion to update our F-22 program. This isn't about having functional planes. This is about funneling money to connected people. We live in a very, very, very corrupt country where, the main emphasis is getting money from the rest of us, stealing our wealth and putting it into the hands of the connected, and then inventing propaganda narratives, whether that's threats from China, Russia, Iraq, Iran, Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims, terrorists in general, white nationalists, whoever it is. They're going to invent narratives so you continue to willfully give away all of your money to the connected. Last story I have today is absolutely telling about how little it actually means to have a functioning military. And over the past 30 years, the woman who was in charge, her name is Elaine Moore Thomas, of testing a good chunk of the steel used in U.S. submarines. She was stress testing it, was faking the test. And it was only discovered after 30 plus years. She's retiring. She's bringing in, her replacement. Her replacement's like, oh, something's going wrong here. So they finally figure it out, right? And this is in 2017 when she started this in 1985, faking these stress tests. And so, the military says it's just out of laziness or whatever. But you have Daniel Hale, who blew the whistle on the drone program, doing years in prison, right? They put him in the most harsh units, and they're not even interested in actually going after this lady. They're looking at giving her minimal sentences. It's faces up to 10 years in prison. They're looking at the minimum of that. They don't want her to go to jail, even though, according to what they would usually say, she compromised the entire U.S. nuclear submarine program, a key part of the U.S. military defense, and they don't even care. It costs the U.S. millions of dollars to go and check and make sure all these submarines still work properly, that the steel is actually safe. By the way, she worked for Bradkin Inc., which had to pay out, I guess, a little bit of money to the military. Of course, it hasn't changed the military's contracts with the companies or anything like that, even though they're clearly at the absolute height of incompetence that over 30 years you can't catch an employee faking test. So again, I don't know, nothing to me proves more that this is all absolutely for show than the fact that, this woman isn't a serious criminal that they're really looking at going after and prosecuting. And, they have the company pay a fine and they move on with their day. Where if you're Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning, John Kiriakou, Daniel Hale, who's all exposing actual crimes committed by the U.S. government, at times exposing places where the U.S. government's incompetence is actually putting maybe America's defense or Americans or American soldiers actually at more risk. They're exposing the failed policies that are, again, could wreak havoc on Americans, and yet they're not interested, or they're interested in punishing the people who exposed those problems. They're not interested in punishing the people who created them.